Have you ever stopped to think that the month your child was born was not a coincidence? That this seemingly ordinary date might, in fact, be a direct reflection of your spiritual past? The universe doesn't make mistakes. Every soul carefully chooses when and where to be born, and even more importantly, into which family to incarnate. If you're a mother or father, know this: your child's birth, in the exact month it happened, is a hidden message about your own soul's journey. A powerful key that reveals what you've already lived, what you still need to heal, and even the silent karma between you and your child. Have you ever wondered why your child was born at that specific stage of your life? Why in that particular year, that season, that moment when you were going through so much? It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't random. It was a meeting point between your spiritual past and the future you both need to build together. The month this soul arrived isn't just a calendar detail. It's a vibrational clue about the kind of healing, transformation, or mirror this child represents for you. This video isn't just about your child, it's about you. It's about looking at the month this soul arrived and understanding why it came at that exact time. What does this child activate in you? What emotions does it awaken? What patterns does it repeat? Each month carries a specific energy, and that energy is deeply tied to an unresolved aspect of your own spiritual past. By understanding this, you begin to transform motherhood or fatherhood into a true path of self-discovery. So, if this topic touched you in any way, I ask you, give this video a like. It shows YouTube that this kind of content matters. Subscribe to the channel to receive more spiritual content like this every week. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. And rest assured, you didn't end up here by chance. Maybe what you'll hear today is the missing piece to understanding why this soul chose you. If your child was born in January, you're not dealing with an ordinary soul. January, in many spiritual traditions, marks the beginning of a sacred cycle. But spiritually, this beginning is only possible for souls that have already closed long and heavy cycles in past lives. This means that if your child chose to be born in this month, they carry within them an ancestral force of renewal, and they came with the mission not only to start something new in their own life, but to unlock something within you. January is the month of souls that come as triggers of change for their parents, even if they don't realize it consciously. January children are often seen as serious, determined, and even reserved. But what few notice is that this seriousness is the result of a soul that has already experienced many mistakes in past lives and now returns with the intention of doing things the right way. They can't stand empty promises. They demand integrity, stability, structure. And the most curious thing? They will instinctively push their parents to embody these qualities, as if, without saying a word, they demand that you be more centered, more steadfast, more present. They don't accept parents who shy away from emotional responsibility. If you had this child at a time in your life when you were unstable, confused, or lost, know that it wasn't an accident. It was precise. They came as a grounding point for your spirit. January children often carry a vibration that forces parents to mature. They do this through their actions, strong behaviors, and even a certain emotional coldness. But this coldness is, in reality, a kind of protective shield for a soul that has been wounded by uncertainties in past lives. And now, they demand clarity, including from their parents. These children tend to have a strong sense of time. They like routine, knowing what's going to happen. They hate sudden changes. And there's a spiritual reason for this. In past lives, they likely experienced situations of abandonment, chaos, or instability. That's why, now, unconsciously, They demand emotional consistency and real presence from their parents. When you lie to a January child, even without malice, they feel it. When you're disconnected, they shut down. They don't handle parents who aren't fully present well, even in silence. Spiritually, the birth of a child in January is a karmic awakening for the parents. They force you to reassess your stance, your values, and the way you lead your own life. It's not uncommon for parents after the birth of a January child to change careers, end toxic relationships, or take on responsibilities they'd been avoiding. It's as if the energy of this child says, "No more excuses, it's time to grow." And yes, this can create a lot of tension at first, but it also brings profound transformations. This soul didn't come to please you, it came to align you. January children are disguised masters. They teach more through example than through words, and even if they seem strict or demanding, they carry a rare sense of justice. They don't accept imbalance. If you spent years trying to please everyone, always putting yourself last, this child came to teach you that you can only truly serve when you stand firm. You might feel judged, pressured, or even challenged by this child, but that happens because they already know you from other lives. And what you built together in the past still echoes in this relationship. It's as if they're saying, "I trust your strength so much that I've come back now to remind you what you're capable of." They're here to restore your inner authority, to help you move out of confusion and into alignment. And most importantly, they won't let you betray yourself again, because they've seen it happen before. So if your child was born in January, take a deep breath and give thanks. You are chosen by a demanding, just, and deeply connected soul to your destiny. This child didn't come to repeat stories. They came to break patterns. And in doing so, they'll break yours too. Not to hurt you, but to remind you of the strength you forgot you had. Look at them with the eyes of your soul, because behind their firmness lies an ancient spiritual love that returned now to finish what you started long ago. If your child was born in February, you are chosen by a truly unique soul. February is a rare month, the shortest in the calendar, often overlooked for its brevity, but spiritually, this makes it the home of the oldest and most sensitive souls. Souls that often lived intensely in the past and now return with the mission to observe, reflect, and bring a new way of seeing the world. If you're a parent of a February child, you've probably noticed there's something unusual about them, something almost silent, but profoundly striking. These children are often highly intuitive with unpredictable behaviors. They don't follow patterns. They don't fit in easily. They often seem distant in their own world. But what few understand is that this isn't distraction, it's spiritual expansion. These are souls that have already experienced various forms of life, that were priests, healers, artists, wanderers, and now return freer, less attached to structures. And because of this, they force their parents to free themselves too. If you're very rigid, controlling, or traditional, this child will be your greatest challenge and your greatest healing. February children have a karmic mission to deconstruct their parents' ego. They don't accept imposition, don't respond well to yelling, punishment, or emotional blackmail. They're born with a sense of freedom that isn't rebellion, it's ancient wisdom, and this can be confusing. Many parents report that they can't understand these children, and they can't, because these children aren't here to be understood by logic. They're here to remind their parents of their own soul, of everything forgotten in the name of routine, fear, responsibilities. They are masters of the invisible. These souls bring with them a kind of dissonance with the modern world. They don't adapt easily to school, authority, or meaningless rules. And this can create conflict if parents try to force them into old molds. The birth of this child in this specific month is a clear invitation. Free yourself. They came to challenge your belief system, to expose what you accept out of habit, and to activate in you the courage to live with more truth, even if it distances you from others' expectations. If they seem complicated, it's because their soul is complex and deep. Many of these children have spiritual gifts that manifest early: vivid dreams, existential questions, connections with the invisible, sensitivity to the environment. They're like radios picking up frequencies adults no longer hear. And if you ignore this, if you try to normalize this child, they may shut down, and you lose the opportunity to see how much they're here to open something in you. Their karma intertwines with yours to break layers of hardness created by fear. They came to remind you to feel, to allow, to imagine again. It's no coincidence that February children often arrive during times of transition. It could be after a loss, a change, a personal crisis. And this isn't a coincidence, it's synchronicity. This child's soul chose to arrive when the veil between who you were and who you're becoming was thinnest. They found you vulnerable on purpose, because they didn't come to be just another in your life. They came to be the key that opens a new door in your consciousness. And in doing so, they also force you to face old pains you hadn't yet had the courage to confront. You might feel challenged, sometimes even insecure, in the face of this child. They seem to read you, see you, question you, even in silence. And it's true, they do see you, because you already know each other. In past lives, this soul might have been your mother, your spiritual teacher, or even someone you abandoned. Now, they return not to judge, but to offer a chance for a new story. A story where love doesn't need to be conditional, where freedom isn't a threat, and where growth doesn't have to come through pain, but through presence. If your child was born in February, receive this soul as the subtle and profound gift it is. They may not say much, they may seem distant, but observe. Every gesture, every look, every silence is a spiritual message. They came to free you, to remind you of who you were before fear. And if you have the courage to follow this soul, they'll take you to inner places you didn't even know existed anymore. Because the true gift of February isn't the change they bring to the world. It's the silent transformation they provoke within you. If your child was born in March, you received a deeply sensitive ancient soul connected to the field of healing. March is the month of souls that return with invisible, but still open emotional scars, carrying unconscious memories of losses, rejections, and excessive giving from past lives. That's why these children often come with a gentle but distant look, as if they're always between two worlds. They came to transform, yes, but their first mission is to heal what you, as a parent, have spent your life avoiding feeling. March children are like mirrors of water. They reflect not only what's in front of them, but also what's hidden within you. They absorb the environment, sense the unspoken, pick up emotions before they're even expressed. And because of this, their birth is rarely light. It often happens after moments of grief, major changes, or periods when parents were emotionally fragile. This synchronicity isn't random. It's the first sign that this soul is here to guide a deep process of inner reconciliation. These children tend to be extremely imaginative. They live in an inner world few can access. They create stories, characters, entire worlds in their minds. And this isn't escape, it's ancestral wisdom. These are souls that were healers, oracles, spiritual artists, silent shamans in past lives. They return now to reopen in their parents a forgotten connection with intuition, sensitivity, and empathy. If you've become too hardened, learned to control to survive, this child arrives like a wave that dissolves everything within you that is no longer true. March brings a soul that demands care but also teaches you to care differently. It's not enough to feed, clothe, protect. This child needs space to be, to feel, to flow. And in demanding this, they confront you with all the times you suppressed your emotions to fit into the world. It's as if they're saying, if you want to understand me, you'll need to allow yourself to feel again. And this isn't an easy lesson, but it's one of the most sacred, because through this emotional connection, you begin to heal alongside them. If you try to impose control, rigid routines, or excessive logic, you'll likely face silent resistance. March children don't shout, they withdraw. They don't confront, they close off. And when this happens, the parents' hearts ache. But this pain is an invitation to listen. The soul of March doesn't demand obedience. It demands true presence. It needs to feel that love isn't conditional on performance, grades, or behavior. And this forces parents to reprogram how they express care, more through listening than commanding. Many of these children have profound intuitive gifts. They sense things, dream of what hasn't yet happened, have a strong connection with nature, animals, silence. These are souls that lived very close to the spiritual plane in past lives, and now return to open portals in their parents' hearts. And this opening isn't always comfortable, because it shows where you're still closed, hardened, trapped in unresolved traumas. This child's presence may move you without apparent reason, and that's exactly where the spiritual work begins. A birth of a child in March breaks emotional armors. Even if you think you're in control, this child will show you, sooner or later, that there are parts of you still waiting for love, for acceptance, for forgiveness. And they'll do this without saying anything, just by being who they are. The healing they bring is silent but powerful. And the more you try to control them, the more you'll see yourself in the mirror of your own rigidity. They're here to remind you that there's no healing without vulnerability, and there's no true love without surrender. So if your child was born in March, receive them as the spiritual gift they are. They're not fragile, they're sensitive, and sensitivity in this world is a power few have the courage to maintain. You are chosen by this soul not because you are perfect, but because together you have the chance to heal wounds that predate this meeting. And the month of March was the exact moment this soul knew you'd be ready to begin. If your child was born in April, you received a soul marked by unfinished actions from past lives. April carries the energy of impulse, awakening, spiritual urgency. These children don't come to observe, they come to stir, provoke, accelerate processes. These are souls that lived intense lives, often as leaders, warriors, revolutionaries. And they return now with the same inner fire, but in a small body. If you feel your child never stays still, has strong opinions, or doesn't accept being told what to do, don't be surprised. They're not stubborn, they're ancient. These children can't stand passivity. They're restless not just physically, but energetically. They sense stagnation in the environment and immediately start stirring everything around them. This includes you. An April child may be born right when you're emotionally stuck, trapped in unmade decisions, or living a life that no longer represents your truth. And they arrive like an earthquake. Often, the birth of this child marks the start of major changes in the parents' lives. Separations, moves, new career choices. This isn't a coincidence. It's activated karma. April children, in past lives, were very active but also committed excesses. They often imposed too much, trampled emotions, or chose conflict over dialogue. Now, they return with the same fire, but with the mission to channel it consciously. And who will help teach this? The parents. But to teach emotional control, you need to have it, and that's where the karma reveals itself. This child will activate in you exactly what you haven't yet mastered. If you're reactive, they react more. If you impose, they explode. They don't accept emotional masks. This soul forces you to align with your own truth, because they sense when you're lying, even to yourself. April children have a radar for authenticity. They test limits, challenge rules, don't accept blind authority. This might seem like disrespect, but it's just their soul asking, are you guiding me with truth or just repeating what you've heard your whole life? This child will force you to think before commanding, to listen before reacting, and, if you allow it, they'll also restore your forgotten courage. Spiritually, April is a month of raw strength. That's why many children born in this period come with intense physical energy. They speak loudly, move a lot, express emotions through their bodies. And this can be exhausting. But know this physical energy is a reflection of suppressed spiritual energy. This soul carries a lot of will, ideas, impulses, and if you try to control all of it with rigidity, they'll break. The secret isn't to contain, it's to channel. Encourage action with purpose, movement with direction. Because if this inner fire isn't guided, it can turn into conflict. You might feel challenged by this child, as if they're always testing you. And they are, but not out of malice, out of mission. In many spiritual traditions, April children are believed to come to reactivate courage in their parents. The courage to change, to stand up, to say no, to break out of inertia. And often, they do this with a simple look, a direct phrase, an unexpected confrontation. They test, but they also inspire. They're small catalysts for big transformations. In the karmic field, the birth of an April child may signal a reunion of souls marked by interrupted bonds. Perhaps you were allies in battles, rivals, or never managed to finish something important. Now this soul returns in a hurry, as if saying, we have little time, let's resolve what's pending. And you feel it. You sense there's something deeper between you, something that can't be explained but imposes itself. And the more you resist, the more this child insists. Because they didn't come to repeat stories, they came to finish them. So if your child was born in April, recognize the strength they carry. And more than that, recognize the strength they're trying to reignite in you. They are impulse, fire, restart, but they're also a master. And like any good master, they'll unsettle you until you awaken. Embrace this journey, because deep down, what this soul wants isn't to dominate you, it's to free you. And they chose April because they knew that only at this moment you'd be ready to be reborn with them. If your child was born in May, you were chosen by a soul that carries the energy of stability, beauty, and emotional reconstruction. May children are souls that in past lives suffered from insecurity, emotional, financial, or even existential. They often lived in chaotic, unstable environments, or were deprived of basics. Now they return with an almost instinctive desire to create roots, security, comfort, and for that, they'll seek it in you. At the same time, they'll teach you where you're still fragile, where you pretend security, but don't feel it. These children often have a sweet, welcoming presence, sometimes even too calm. But behind this tranquility lies a soul that deeply values what's solid, reliable, predictable. This is because, spiritually, May's energy is tied to healing through the body and the material world. These are children who value touch, hugs, physical space, the beauty of the environment. And all of this has a purpose, to bring parents back to the present. If you live with your mind in the future or disconnect easily, this child will pull you back to the now. May is also the month of souls that came to rebuild the value of self-love within the family lineage. That's why it's common for children born in this month to make parents confront their own issues with worthiness, self-esteem, and pleasure. If you've grown accustomed to living for others, forgetting yourself, this child will start to demand, not in words, but in energy, that you look at yourself, care for yourself, nurture yourself. They notice when you're exhausted, even if you smile, and they'll behave restlessly until you truly respect yourself. These children have a strong bond with the senses. They love food, music, scents, nature. They need physical contact, affection, eye contact. But more than that, they teach through sensory experience. A May child can heal you just by the way they rest in your lap, the smile they offer when you're upset, or the way they turn a house into a home with their mere presence. This soul knows that small things are big, and they teach you this, even if you've forgotten. Spiritually, the birth of a child in May often happens after periods of internal or external disruption for the parents. It could be after a separation, loss, move, financial or existential crisis. This soul comes as if saying, now it's time to rebuild, but consciously. And this rebuilding isn't just from the outside in, it's from the inside out. This child will help you find your center. But for that, you'll have to strip away the illusions of stability you created just to survive. Often, parents of May children feel guilty for not being able to offer everything. But what this soul really wants isn't material abundance. It's emotional security. They need to feel you're present even without luxury, that there's routine even without perfection, that there's affection even without fancy words. This child detects emotional falseness easily. That's why they force you to be more honest, including with yourself. And this honesty begins by admitting when you're tired, confused, or still rebuilding. May children are also deeply connected to the earth. They love plants, animals, nature. And this makes sense. May is the month of gardener souls. They came to plant something new in your life. But before that, they'll make you clear the soil. They'll show you where you still carry grudges, where you insist on staying in barren ground. And with the patience only the wise have, they'll wait for you to allow yourself to bloom again. Because they know beauty only grows where there's truth, and they're not in a hurry. But they have a mission. If your child was born in May, know that you're facing a healing soul. But one that, before healing, needs to be deeply welcomed. They'll demand your best, not in terms of performance, but in terms of presence. And in return, they'll show you a new way of living, simpler, more sensitive, more real. They came to teach you that the security you seek outside can only be built within, and that truly loving someone begins when you finally allow yourself to love yourself. If your child was born in June, you're facing a soul that brings the energy of a dual spiritual journey. June, in ancient traditions, represents the soul living between two worlds, intellect and heart, matter and spirit, speech and silence. This duality can be seen early on. June children are curious, intense, but also deeply sensitive. They're often extremely communicative at times and mysteriously withdrawn at others. This isn't instability. It's emotional wisdom accumulated over many lives. These children have the mission to reconnect their parents with their own emotional essence, but through thought, exchange, listening, and language. They're born with the ability to translate emotions into words, to turn feelings into ideas. That's why they're observant, detail-oriented, and often surprise adults with unsettling questions or comments that seem to come from someone much older. If you consider yourself too rational, too practical, or disconnected from your intuition, this child came to flip that switch. The birth of a child in June activates the field of karmic communication. This means everything that was swallowed, silenced, repressed, or hidden in your family history will be brought to light through this child. They might seem provocative, questioning, hard to handle, but what they're really doing is exposing the silences that have already hurt you. It's as if they're saying, "Here, with me you'll need to learn to express yourself. You'll need to listen to me. You'll need to listen to yourself." And this is deep spiritual work that starts slowly but transforms everything. Many of these souls were, in past lives, messengers, scribes, artists, healers through words. That's why, when they return, they come with the mission to use language to heal, connect, illuminate. But before they can do this in the world, they need to feel they can do it at home. If the environment they live in is aggressive, dry, or distant, these children withdraw. If they sense openness, affection, encouragement to express themselves, they bloom. And as they bloom, they make you bloom too, because they'll remind you how much you needed to be heard and weren't. June children often provoke in their parents a sense of internal urgency, that time is passing, that there's something important still left to say, that there are pending conversations with others or with yourself. They're like emotional alarm clocks. They touch where it hurts. They insist where you hesitate, but they do it with lightness. They don't come with the weight of confrontation, but with the lightness of curiosity, and that disarms. Because suddenly you find yourself saying things you never said, opening your heart in ways you didn't know you needed. In the karmic field, the birth of a child in June signals reconnections with bonds interrupted by misunderstandings, unspoken words, or broken promises in past lives. Perhaps this soul was a sibling, a partner, someone you parted ways with due to a lack of communication. Now they return with a new body, a new relationship, but with the same mission: to teach truth through words, to heal the relationship through listening. And this healing will require you not only to listen, but also to learn to express yourself with emotional honesty. These children are highly sensitive to tones of voice, words spoken in anger, judgments. And they'll show you, with immediate reactions, where there's still harshness in your communication. It's not about being perfect, but about being present. A June child needs to feel seen, that their ideas have space, that there's exchange. They don't need ready answers. They need true emotional presence. And this presence, when cultivated with them, expands within you, in your relationships, in your own inner voice. If your child was born in June, embrace this soul with listening, patience, and truth. They didn't come just to make you speak. They came to teach you to listen with your heart. And in doing so, they'll heal ancestral pains that still echo in your silence. June is the month of healing words. And this child is living proof that love, when spoken with truth, transforms everything, even what seemed already lost. If your child was born in July, you were chosen by a soul carrying deep karma tied to affection, protection, and the emotional healing of family bonds. July is the month of ancient hearts, souls that experienced profound losses in past lives, especially in the realm of love and family. By being born in this month, this child not only carries extraordinary sensitivity, but also a very specific spiritual commitment: to heal broken homes, restore wounded love, and teach what true connection is. And they start by doing this with you. These children often have a natural affection, a visceral need for closeness, care, belonging. They sense their parents' mood before words are even spoken. They feel when the environment is tense, even if no one says anything, and they respond emotionally to it. If you grew up without affection or struggled to express what you feel, this child will confront you with that. They won't accept half your love. They want it all: your presence, your touch, your listening, your soul fully there. Because that's what they came to give back: real emotional connection. July children have a very strong spiritual connection with the mother figure, even if, in past lives, they lived as wounded mothers, absent fathers, or abandoned children. That's why they return with a very ancient emotional memory tied to emotional security. When this security falters, even slightly, they react with crying, anxiety, or retreat into deep silences. It's not tantrums, it's soul trauma, And understanding this changes everything. Instead of trying to control or correct, you start to protect, not just the child, but also yourself. The birth of this soul often happens during phases of the parents' lives when they're emotionally exhausted or lacking real connections. Sometimes it comes after a period of grief, betrayal, family estrangement, or in the midst of an unstable relationship. And this has a purpose. This soul chooses the moment of greatest vulnerability to activate a healing that could no longer wait. And in doing so, they force you to dive into feelings you've been ignoring: fear of abandonment, difficulty trusting, resistance to truly surrendering to affection. July children don't need many words. They feel. And because of that, they teach. They'll teach you to identify where you're still hiding from love, where you've built emotional barriers to avoid suffering. This child will ask for your lap, even when you think they're too old. They'll want to sleep close to you, even when others say it's spoiling too much. And yes, this might challenge your logic, but this soul knows emotional healing doesn't follow external rules. It follows the rhythm of the heart. And they're here to make you trust that rhythm again. In the karmic field, the birth of a child in July indicates very deep family reconnections. In other lives, you may have been mother and child, siblings, lovers, or even someone you abandoned or who abandoned you. This child returns now to rebuild what was broken, not just with you, but with the entire ancestral lineage. Sometimes, parents of July children feel a love so intense it's almost frightening, as if there's an unbreakable bond. This happens because there is, indeed, a spiritual connection that transcends time and forms. These children have a natural need to protect those they love. They're caring, empathetic, some even anxious from a young age. But this isn't fragility. It's an overflow of love accumulated from other lives. And this overflow, if not balanced, can make them unwell. That's why they need parents who also know how to care for themselves, who show by example that you don't have to sacrifice yourself to be loved. And this will only be possible when you look at yourself with more compassion, more truth, and allow this soul to help soften the pains you never told anyone about. If your child was born in July, know that they're your emotional remedy. But like any true remedy, they can also be uncomfortable at first, because to heal, they'll touch where it hurts. They'll draw attention to unresolved affections, childhood traumas you swore you'd overcome, bonds you still haven't had the courage to heal. But don't give up, because this child didn't come to repeat your story. They came to give you a chance to write a different ending. And that ending begins when you decide to love with your whole heart, again, and without fear. If your child was born in August, you're facing a soul with the energy of spiritual leadership, ancestral courage, and an innate sense of mission. August is the month of souls that in past lives held positions of power, not necessarily out of ego, but out of purpose. They were kings and queens, yes, but also healers, tribal leaders, spiritual advisors, guardians of knowledge. And now they return with the same strength, but in a child's body. A body that, even small, carries such a striking presence that you feel, this soul is not ordinary. From an early age, August children display a kind of authority that isn't taught. It's innate. They speak with conviction, have strong opinions, and often surprise adults with premature emotional maturity. But this natural authority, if misunderstood, can seem like stubbornness, arrogance, or difficulty obeying. But it's not about that. This soul remembers it came with an important role, and if they sense inconsistency around them, parents who say one thing and do another, for example, they react, challenge, shut down, or explode, because they don't accept being guided by those who don't lead with truth. These children test their parents' emotional balance constantly. They don't accept orders without explanation. They don't respond to emotional blackmail. And above all, they don't tolerate environments where disrespect is disguised as authority. August children have an inner radar for injustice. If you're someone who grew up learning to swallow hard, obey without questioning, or lower your head, this child will seem difficult. But the truth is, they came to teach you the opposite. You can raise your head too. You can stand up for yourself too. The birth of this child often marks the start of a cycle of personal power for the parents. It's as if life is saying, you can't hide anymore. This soul will expose you, and expose not in a negative sense, but in the sense that now, everything you thought was under control within you starts to surface. This child looks at you with conviction. Sometimes they challenge you. Other times, they admire you with a look that seems to say, be great, be strong, because I need you that way. That look is a mirror of your strength that's still dormant. August children have a strong connection with the sun, with radiance, with vital energy, but they also have periods of deep introspection and withdrawal. They're like great leaders who sometimes feel alone for not being understood. And here, you as a parent need to be attentive, because this strong soul also needs protection. They carry memories of wars, betrayals, great responsibilities, and sometimes all they want is your lap. But they won't ask. You'll need to notice. You'll need to be present with your heart, not with control. Karmically, August children often have ancient ties with their parents linked to power and destiny. Perhaps in other lives, you led something together, or perhaps there was imbalance, where one was dominant and the other submissive. Now the reunion serves to restore balance in the relationship, and this requires maturity. Because this child might, without realizing it, activate old wounds in you related to authority, whether from suffering abuses or never learning to stand up for yourself. And the healing begins when you understand this soul didn't come to control you. It came to grow with you. These children thrive when they feel respected, not in the sense of being pampered, but in the sense of being truly heard. Give them responsibilities. Let them make small decisions. Invite them to collaborate at home. This helps them feel they're part of something, and that their power has purpose. Because if this power isn't well guided, it can turn into manipulation, authoritarianism, or loneliness. But when channeled with awareness, these souls have the potential to transform everything around them, including you. If your child was born in August, know that you received more than a child. You received a mission. This soul came to activate your strength, confront your passivity, and reignite the courage you may have buried for the sake of survival. They can be challenging, intense, even hard to handle at times, but they'll also be the most powerful mirror of your greatness. They chose you because they knew, even if you don't realize it, you were ready to become as strong as they are. And the journey starts now, with presence, with truth, and with a love that honors both your destinies. If your child was born in September, they didn't come into the world by chance. They came with a mission of emotional reordering, ancestral healing, and spiritual purification. This is a soul marked by past lives where they had to keep everything under control to survive. Chaotic environments, unexpected losses, unstable bonds. Now, they return with a natural talent for noticing disorder, identifying imbalances, and correcting what's out of place, whether in the environment, words, or emotions of the home. And if you pay attention, you'll notice that from an early age, this child is already observing everything. September children carry the energy of the silent guardian. They're not necessarily the most energetic or expressive, but they're the ones who feel the most. They know when something's wrong, even if no one says anything. They notice the tiredness in your eyes, the tension in your touch, the truth behind your silence. And because of this, they're often mistaken for demanding or too detail-oriented children. But it's not whimsy. It's refined sensitivity. They were born to repair, and for that, they need to see what's broken. These souls in past lives were healers, doctors, teachers, community organizers, silent spiritual leaders. They return now with a naturally sharp sense of order and ethics. This means they often challenge their parents indirectly. They don't accept inconsistency, shut down when they feel disrespected, and react with frustration when they notice the environment is disorganized. Emotionally or energetically, if you feel your child is too critical, maybe what they're trying to show you is what you've been ignoring for too long. The birth of a child in September often happens at moments in life when parents are seeking clarity, purpose, or trying to rediscover themselves. This soul arrives as a point of balance. And yes, sometimes they demand that balance before they even know how to speak. That's because their presence carries an energetic field that requires harmony. And if that harmony doesn't exist, this child gets sick easily, becomes irritable, withdraws, or starts showing compulsive behaviors. All of this is the soul's way of saying, please, fix this space, inside and out. In the karmic field, the birth of this child indicates a reunion with someone who, in another life, took care of you, or whom you abandoned because you were too busy. Now, they return so you can rebalance this bond. And this rebalancing only happens with real presence, quality time, attentive listening, because these souls can't stand superficiality. They came to teach you that true love is revealed in care, in details, in respect for routine, and in the coherence between what's said and what's done. September children may seem more closed off or demanding, but this is just the armor they use to protect themselves. Deep down, they're extremely loyal, protective, and committed to those they love. They just need an environment where they can trust. And that trust is only built when you show emotional stability. That's why this soul will teach you, sometimes harshly, that being an adult isn't about control. It's about emotional responsibility. And that includes recognizing when you're wrong. These children thrive in environments with order, beauty, routine, and respect. They're sensitive to mess, but especially emotional mess. And by forcing you to look at this, they give you a rare chance to organize your own soul, because while you help this child navigate the world, they help you face parts of yourself you never had the courage to confront. With them, you learn that discipline can be love, routine can be freedom, and care in the details is often the fastest path to healing. If your child was born in September, understand, they're your master of order, not in the sense of rigidity, but of truth. They'll demand consistency, show you where you're still inconsistent. Ask for attention to things you never thought mattered. But this is a gift, because they don't want perfection, they want presence, truth, and commitment. And they chose you because they knew you were ready for this kind of love, calmer, more responsible, deeper. Love that doesn't show off, but transforms every day. If your child was born in October, you're facing a soul with a subtle but extremely powerful mission: to harmonize bonds that time, ego, or fear have fragmented. October is the month of diplomatic souls, ancient hearts that lived in contexts of division, conflict, or extremes. In past lives, many of these souls witnessed deep misunderstandings, familial, social, or spiritual, and now return with a natural impulse to unite, pacify, and reorganize what was broken. But this task begins within their own home. From a very young age, October children show a deep need for peace around them. They're sensitive to arguments, disagreements, raised voices. Even if they don't understand the words, they feel the energy. And instead of reacting with anger, they often withdraw, go silent, or try to resolve, offering affection, changing the subject, trying to distract. This isn't manipulation, it's spiritual memory. This soul remembers what it's like to live in environments where love was interrupted and wants to ensure that doesn't happen again. October children have a strong sense of justice. From an early age, they care about others. Ask if you're okay. Feel empathy for the suffering of strangers. They're the kids who defend a classmate, get sad when a cartoon ends with someone hurt, or are deeply upset by any kind of exclusion. This happens because in other lives, this soul may have been both the excluded and the excluder, and now carries the responsibility to do things differently. These children challenge their parents in a gentle but transformative way. If you tend to be harsh, controlling, or emotionally distant, this soul will react with fragility, sadness, or even psychosomatic illnesses. And it's not because they're weak, but because they absorb everything. Their mission is to balance, and for that, they need to live in environments where affection, respect, and empathy are consistently present. They'll force you to review your tone of voice, the way you respond, the time you dedicate, not because they demand, but because they mirror you. In the karmic field, the birth of a child in October indicates relationships interrupted by grudges or judgments in past lives. Perhaps this soul was a great love, a betrayed friend, someone you distanced yourself from out of pride. Now they return as your child and bring the rare chance to love without masks, to start anew without the weight of old pain. But this requires emotional maturity, because this child will offer you the purest love, and if you're not whole, you might reject it without realizing it. October children have a deep connection with the world of beauty and art. Many of these souls were artists, poets, musicians, or healers in past lives. That's why they now express feelings with refined sensitivity. They love colors, music, scents, beautiful words, and often seek to transform their environment into something lighter. This pursuit isn't vanity, it's healing. They try to organize external chaos to alleviate internal chaos. And in doing so, they teach us that beauty is also medicine. These children need routine, yes, but they need kindness even more. They need touch, eye contact, active listening. And they don't accept emotional falseness. They know when you're pretending to be okay. They know when your everything's fine is a lie. And silently, they'll offer you what you hide, emotional comfort. And if you allow it, you'll realize how much this soul is helping you heal what you didn't have the courage to face. Because they didn't come to judge, they came to balance. If your child was born in October, know that they're your point of reunion. The soul that silently wants to see you whole. That desires more lightness between you. That vibrates every time there's an unhurried hug, a conversation without haste, a care without effort. They chose you to live love without old wounds. But for that, you'll need to heal yours first. And they'll be there, patient, loving, generous, waiting for you to return to yourself. Because only then can you both finally live the bond that in other lives was only a promise. If your child was born in November, they carry one of the most intense spiritual energies of the karmic zodiac. These souls are born with very strong spiritual memories, traumas, losses, ancient wisdom, unresolved soul pacts, and because of this, their presence in the world is never light. November children don't go unnoticed even when they say nothing. There's an energetic field around them that unsettles, activates, provokes. These are souls that weren't born to please. They were born to awaken. And the first being they come to awaken is you. These children have a sensitivity that goes beyond the emotional. It's psychic. They know when someone's lying, even if they're smiling. They sense hidden tensions, buried secrets, pains camouflaged in silence. These are souls that see through walls and often don't know how to handle this at first. That's why they can be more reserved, distrustful, or intensely attached to their mother or father. They need to feel safe to open their visions, to trust their own sensitivity. And that trust is built by you, with true presence and respect. Spiritually, November children come from lineages of deep power. In other lives, they were shamans, priestesses, healers, prophets, or in some cases, people who suffered for challenging systems, religions, or power structures. Now, they return with that latent strength within them, and often, this shows up as emotional intensity, crying fits, deep anger, possessive love. Don't try to suppress this intensity. It's a sign of their mission. These souls need to be welcomed, not contained. They need to learn to channel, not hide. The birth of a November soul often occurs during major turning points in the parents' lives. Radical changes, endings, losses, healings, or extreme situations. This isn't a coincidence. These children choose moments of instability because they know their presence will force their parents to confront deep truths that were swept under the rug. And that's where the magic and discomfort lies. These souls don't allow pain to keep being ignored. They arrive and turn on all the lights in the house, including the ones you'd rather keep off. Karmically, the bond between you and this child may have started in lives marked by secrets, betrayals, silent pacts, or traumatic losses. Perhaps this soul was someone you couldn't protect, or someone you lost without being able to say goodbye. Now they return as your child, and with that, they give you a new chance to do things differently. But beware, this chance won't come without pain. It will come through confrontation. Because November souls don't believe in superficial changes. They want real transformation. November children test your patience, your emotional maturity, and your ability to deal with your own shadow. They can't stand hypocrisy, authoritarianism without dialogue, and are especially sensitive to manipulation. They're intense, yes, but they're also loyal, deep, and incredibly perceptive. If they feel they can trust, they open up like no one else. If they sense falseness, they close off and become inaccessible. That's why these children challenge you to be a more whole adult, without masks, without power games, without escape. These children thrive when given space to feel. They need silence, time alone, energetically clean environments. They're connected to symbols, dreams, spirituality, mysteries. Many have intuitive talents, visions, premonitions from a very young age. And yes, this can be frightening. But don't reject it. Embrace this innate spirituality. Encourage connection with nature, art, breathing, intuition. Because the more this soul feels authorized to be who they are, the more they become light, a light that can heal an entire lineage. If your child was born in November, don't treat them as fragile. They're a force of nature. But don't treat them as an adult either. They need your lap, your listening, respect for their sensitivity. This soul chose you because they knew you were ready to break old patterns, inside and out. And maybe you don't feel ready now. But trust, they've already seen your soul before. They already know your light. And even in the parts of you that you hide the most, they keep choosing you. If your child was born in December, they bring the energy of souls that broke boundaries in past lives, geographic, mental, spiritual boundaries. These children are born with a thirst for the world, for truth, for freedom. From a young age, they show a sparkle in their eyes when they discover something new, a fascination with stories, cultures, ideas. They can't stand feeling trapped. They're like souls that have already traveled far, and now, even in a child's body, continue seeking broader horizons. The birth of this soul marks a new cycle of expansion in your life. December is the month of great karmic lessons tied to faith, freedom, and personal truth. These children come with a very strong spiritual connection to the idea of purpose. Often, they don't accept shallow explanations. don't follow traditions out of obligation, and refuse to act just because everyone does it. They want to understand the why of everything. And this can challenge you as a parent. Because December children don't bend easily, they'll test your beliefs, your certainties, your rules, but not to defy you, to free you. These souls in other lives were explorers, philosophers, traveling healers, spiritual teachers who taught far from home. And now, even as young children, they carry an inner restlessness that only calms when they're learning, experiencing, living something new. This might seem like hyperactivity or inattention, but it's not. It's a need for energetic expansion. If you try to contain this child too much with strict rules, excessive control, or authoritarianism, they may disconnect, shut down, or rebel. The secret isn't to hold them back. It's to walk alongside them, to journey together. The birth of a child in December often happens when parents are stagnant, trapped in old patterns, or emotionally exhausted. This soul arrives like a spiritual breeze of renewal. They'll shake up some certainties, question family traditions, and even inspire you to seek new paths. Sometimes they invite you to study something new, change environments, see life with more lightness and spirituality. December children don't accept life as mere survival. They want meaning, and they want to remind you of that too. In the karmic field, December children often return to release old contracts involving blind obedience, spiritual imprisonment, or lives dedicated to duty without joy. Perhaps this soul was a disciple you guided, or someone you tried to protect with rigidity. Now, they return as your child, but this time they don't want rigid protection. They want spiritual partnership. They want you to guide them with freedom. And that's your challenge: to educate without imprisoning, to love without smothering, to protect without controlling. These children are sensitive to hypocrisy and excessive rules. They can't stand lies, empty promises, or authority without example. This demands something rare from you: coherence. And this coherence, when practiced, transforms. Because little by little, you'll realize this child came to make you grow too, to pull you out of your comfort zone, to teach you to trust the invisible more, to take risks, to dream again. With them, life stops being just a repetitive cycle and becomes a journey with purpose. December children thrive in environments with emotional freedom, encouragement of creativity, and contact with spirituality. They love stories, rituals, different cultures. They're drawn to everything that expands the mind and heart. They're seekers, and because of that, they'll challenge you to be one too. If you're very rational, very restrained, this soul will seem like a hurricane. But that's exactly what they came to be: the soul that disrupts to heal, that moves everything out of place so something new can be born. If your child was born in December, celebrate. They're the soul that closes one cycle and opens a new one, in you and in your lineage. They came with urgency, with intensity, with accumulated wisdom and an immense desire to live with truth. You don't need to know everything. You just need to walk beside them with openness, courage, and an awakened heart. Because they don't just want to be guided. They want you to awaken with them. And together, you'll go further than you ever imagined. You may have watched this video out of curiosity, but if you've made it this far, it's because something inside you recognized the truth behind every word. Our children aren't just biology. They're souls that have crossed time, the invisible, and the layers of karma to meet us again. Each birth month carries a frequency, a message, a silent invitation to look more deeply at the bond we have with them and at what we still need to heal within ourselves. Maybe now you're recalling behaviors in your child that once seemed confusing, but in light of these revelations, they make perfect sense. Maybe you've realized they don't just challenge you, but activate you, transform you, force you to grow. This isn't by chance. They chose you exactly because they knew you were ready. And if at any point you doubted your ability to be the parent they need, know this: that doubt is part of it. But the bond between you is older than any uncertainty. Every soul that reincarnates brings an invisible script, not a fixed destiny, but a soul plan, with lessons, healings, and reconciliations still pending. Your child didn't come just to be raised. They came to remind you of who you are, your strength, your mission. Sometimes they're the mirror of your wounds. Other times, they're the channel for your healing. But in every way, they're a chance. A new chance to love with more awareness, to live with more purpose, to break the cycles that no longer serve. If this content touched your soul, don't let this experience pass in silence. Like the video so it can reach more people who are also raising children with open hearts. Subscribe to the channel. Here, we go far beyond the obvious, always with depth and truth. And most importantly, tell me in the comments which month your child was born in, and if you recognized yourself in this spiritual reading. I read every comment with care because this channel isn't just mine, it's ours. We're building a community of conscious parents who see their children with the eyes of the soul, not just the demands of the world. And if you want to keep exploring the spiritual mysteries of motherhood, reincarnation, and the karmic bonds between parents and children, there are already other videos on the channel that will expand your vision even further. Just click the suggested link at the end or explore the upcoming content. Each video is a key. Thank you for staying until the end. May your journey with your child be lighter, more awakened, and more loving from now on. Remember, their birth was a reunion, and you don't need to understand everything right away. You just need to keep listening with your heart. See you in the next video.